Part 2, Report Generator. Let's begin by going up to View. Then let's come down and click on Report Generator. And in the Report Generator window that opens, let's first begin by setting up the same conditions that we had when we finished Part 1. That is Bob. The layout will be sporting crossers, bobs. The gun will be trap singles. The target will be left to right 20-yard crosser. And I'm going to make one minor change up in here to limit the number of targets we're going to deal with by clicking 29 and changing it to 23. And that will limit the number of targets that we're looking at to 85. So in this data window down here right now, if we were to go over and pull the slider down and count every target in there, there are 85 targets. Now the first thing that the report generator allows us to do is to get some statistical information very simply by clicking on this button. And then in the window that opens, we're going to go through three major areas and talk about what that information means. But before we do that, let's start at the top. This information is basically labeled Bob, the sporting crossers layout. The time period is from May 12th through June 23rd. All shots, meaning it could be the first or second shot, and the left to right 20-yard crosser. The top portion up here is broken into two areas. One that gives you average time, average range, and average pointing error. And let's cover that in the beginning. When we're doing something like a 20-yard crosser where we're shooting the same target over and over again, in this case, the average time that it took to shoot the target isn't very significant because I was trying to shoot the target in the center of its trajectory, just about straight in front of me, and that turned out to be about 1.5 seconds. And as I mentioned before, we are dealing with 85 targets here, and so this was the average of the 85 targets. 1.52 seconds was the time that it took to shoot the target. The average range, the target was at 20.79 yards, and remember, this was a 20-yard crossing target, and when it is straight in front of me, it would have been exactly 20 yards. When it's a little bit to the right or the left of me, it would have been a little farther away. So you could see on average I was breaking the target fairly close to the center of its trajectory. Now the new thing. What is this average pointing error? The average pointing error is the distance from the center of the clay to the center of the pattern. So this has been computed by dry fire, and over the 85 targets that I shot, it said my average error factor was 7.0 inches, or 7.0 inches from the center of the clay to the center of the pattern. Then on the right-hand side, it gives me other facts. Based upon 85 shots down here, and the fact that it calculated that I missed 9 and I hit 76, it says that my hit percentage was 89. Now let's move into the next area down here, which is now being highlighted. And this area of the screen is showing us the difference between targets that are traveling from the left to the right versus targets that are traveling from the right to the left. And as we look close into this data, and remember, I was exclusively shooting targets that were moving from the left to the right, so we should expect to see all the data on this top line. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of it and see what we're finding. First of all, it says that I had 76 hits. Then it said that I had 9 misses, and that compares with what we had up above. The next area here is talking about whether I was ahead of the target or whether I was behind the target. So let's look here. It said 39 times I was ahead of the target. Target was moving from left to right. So 39 times I was to the right of it or ahead of it. And when I was in shooting ahead of it, on average I was 5.6 inches too far ahead of it to be perfect. Then what about when I was behind? And here it says I was behind 46 times. When I was behind an average of 5.0 inches. And then continuing on, it explains to us when I was above how many times I was above the target and how many times I was below the target. So you can see here that I was above the target 62 times out of the 85. And when I was above, I was on average 4.5 inches above the target. When I was below the target, which was 23 times, I was on average 1.8 inches below the target. Then we have the next area of the screen, which is talking and giving you information based about whether the clay was rising in front of you or whether it was falling. Now let's think about this target I was shooting, a crosser, which was a left to right crosser. The target was rising until it got directly in front of me, and then it was falling the rest of the way over to the ground on the right-hand side. So you would expect here that what we'll see then is if I shot the target before it got to the apex of its trajectory, roughly straight in front of me, it would be considered a rising target. If I shot the target after it had passed in front of me and was on the way to the ground, that would be the definition of a falling target. So here's what we see. 58 times I hit the target when it was rising, and 9 times I missed it when it was rising. 18 times I hit the target when it was falling, and I didn't miss any falling targets. Next, we have a category called left and a category called right. So what we find here is when the clay was rising, 32 times I was to the left of the target by an average of 4.7 inches, and that would amount to the same thing as being behind. And 35 times I was to the right or ahead of the target by an average of 5.7 inches. Then we go to the next category, which is above and below. 48 times I was below the target, 48 times I was above the target by an average of 4.5 inches, and 19 times I was below the target by an average of 1.8 inches. And then the falling category down here, I won't read through this, but you can understand what it's all about. So this statistical information is available by simply clicking. And let me go back and show you how I got there. So once I had the criteria set up, then it was simply a case of clicking on this button in order to be able to see the statistics for that particular criteria. Now, at this point, when I'm over here, I have two choices. I can go ahead and click the print button and print a copy of this information, and in this format, the print will be first the statistical information will be at the top of the first page, and then 25 targets will be on the bottom half of that page, and then whatever targets remain, there will be 48 targets per page until there are enough pages to get the 85 targets. Or I can click on Save as a PDF file, and it'll save that same information in PDF form in case I don't have a printer and I want to be able to print that information later on, or at least look at it in a serious fashion. Now let's go back again. Click on OK. I had the opportunity of being able to just simply click on Print, and that would take me directly out and print the information that you see up here in the data file, and this information will be in the format that you see it here. And so what we are learning is that if you click on Print, the format of the data is exactly what we see in the window, but if you had clicked on Statistics and gone over and then clicked Print, it'll be in a different format. And in that other format, it will print clearly your pointing error, where in this format, it does not show the pointing error. And so then besides being able to print, you can save this same information. So I suggest from there that you just simply take some practice shots, do your criteria, and then start playing with it as you've seen me play it here, so you fully understand how you're going to be able to get the information that you'd like out of the report generator. Before we come to a close, let's take a look at the PDF file that I have saved. I saved both the one that has the pointing error and the one with the basic data. This one is the one with the pointing error. Notice that on the upper half of the page, on the opening page, we have the summary information, which we've looked at in detail before. And then directly underneath that, you'll see that there are 25 targets. And then below that, on the second page, there are another, if you count them, there would be 48 more targets. And then finally, as we move on to page 3, we have the remaining targets of the 85 that was in this particular report. Taking you all the way to the bottom, that's the end of the third page. So this is the format that you are going to expect when you click on the PDF file where you want the error, the pointing error. All right, now let's come down here and look at the area and define this further. You can see the far left column gives the target name, and what I was doing, of course, was shooting left to right 20-yard crossers, so each one of them has that name. Then in the next column, it clearly tells me whether I hit or miss the target. In the following column, it gives me the time at which I shot the target, in other words, how far into the trajectory. Then the range of the target in yards, in tenths of a yard. And then finally, under distance, we have 3 things. What I'm highlighting right now is the pointing error. The next column is whether you are to the right or the left of the target, or in other words, your horizontal error. And finally, the third column under distance is whether you're above or below the target. So this is the format that you're going to expect when you either save it in PDF form or you print it. In this case, for our specific situation, we would have received a 3-page report with the summary information on the top of the first page. And now I have changed to the other version of the report, the one that looks just like what is in the window when you're looking at the report. And in this case, notice that the summary is not at the top. It will be on the bottom. The difference you can see here is that this one has a shot number. It also clearly shows you the date and the time you took the shot. It duplicates the target name. It has another column called barrel, and this would be in the case of shooting doubles, whether you shot the target with the first barrel or the second barrel, so you would get a 1 or a 2 in this column. The time is the same as we saw on the other report. In this case, the range is given in feet instead of given in yards. So it's given in feet and inches. Then we have a duplication of the hit or miss. And then finally, under distance, we only have 2 columns. The first column being how far you were above or below the target, and the second column how far you were to the right or the left of the column. Now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go down and look farther down. And so here we have the first page is completed. We're getting on to the second page of our 85 targets. We move on then to the third page, and it completes on the third page. And then on a fourth page, completely by itself, you're going to find the summary information. So that is the difference that you're going to see between the 2 reports. One report has dates and times and shot numbers, and the other one does not. But on the other one that we looked at first, it does have the pointing error clearly defined. That's about all we're going to tell you about the report generator. I think you'll find that it's a very good value and a very handy tool to have. I hope this has helped you.